And
Sure. Makes sense.
it came up with something like insanely smart investments, absurdly good returns. I don't know if we should use that one. Um,
Yeah, we might get in trouble there.
how about crazy good wealth strategies, ridiculously strong portfolios? I, I, the one I like out of those is insanely smart investments. You're still using this.
Yeah, let's try
So
it.
are we going to be the insanely smart investments podcast?
I guess so. Yeah.
Love it. Okay, that's the name of the show. So we're gonna today, at least to start out, we'll see where this goes. We're gonna talk about some of the things you experienced and some of the thoughts you had when you transitioned from a Main Street kind of
Hmm.
brokerage to Clear Capital Management.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have no idea what that's like. I mean, I worked at Merrill Lynch, but not on the brokerage side. So
Yeah. I'll tell you. I'll tell you a little bit about it in the podcast here. Good morning, everyone. This is Adrian Hovey. I'm here with Calvin Rose, and we're with the Insanely Smart Investments podcast. This is episode one. For those of you who don't know me, I came to Clear Capital Management from the broker-dealer world about 6 months ago. And as I've come to get to know the company and get to know the other half of the industry, I thought it'd be an awesome opportunity to sit down with Calvin and just tell him about what things were like in the broker-dealer, talk about the changes that I was hoping I would experience when I came over to the independent world, and just how things have been for the past 6 months. I get asked this question a lot by new clients. All of my other clients have already heard it from me, but it seems to be sort of an evergreen topic of discussion about, hey, why did you leave? What things have been different? Why did you make that transition? So I'm here with Calvin Rose, the Chief Investment Officer of Clear Capital, and we're just going to have a conversation about what things were like and what things are like now.
well, you'll now understand what time zones we're in because I'm gonna say good afternoon. It's 1:46 here.
Yes, and as you know, Calvin, when I was in the Navy, it was very important that we get those morning and afternoons correct for people
Oh
because it
yeah.
was
Yeah, well you guys
always
were on the 24-hour time thing, so that made it
always
easier, right?
yeah, couldn't mess it up. That's the
Yeah.
one advantage.
I'm Calvin Rose. I'm the Chief Investment Officer for Clear Capital Management. Unlike Adrian, I did come from Merrill Lynch, but I wasn't on the brokerage side. So, this was sort of a ground up thing that we did from scratch, getting Clear Capital Management started. And it's been a really fun many years, right? It's been 11 years since we
Yeah.
started doing this.
Yep. And 11 years is a great run. The broker dealer that I came from, I think had just celebrated their 100-year anniversary a year and a half ago or 2 years ago now, whatever it was. So
Yeah.
totally different, totally different tenures, as it were. Strengths and weaknesses, though, right?
Yep. So what were some of the things that um, I don't want to ask you the hard question. What were some of the things that you did like at the brokerage that caused
Sorry,
you leaving? I mean,
we're starting about what I did or did not like. What was it?
sure. Let's get Adrian in trouble.
No, let's not get in trouble. Well, let's start with the good things. There's always pros and cons, and the good things, that I like to retain and I like to keep top of mind are how absolutely fantastic that old company was with building relationships. I think if there's one competitive advantage that they may still retain, it's that ability, right? The folks there, we get a lot of good experience with it, good training with it. And really, I just think that the role itself lends well to people who enjoy building relationships. I don't know how you would do this job if you didn't like that, but a
Yeah.
lot of people do tend to forget about that, right? I mean, it's a critical part. I mean, if I have one job, it's to meet people and have interesting conversations. So there always has to be that. And the old broker dealer was a really good place to hone those skills and develop those skills for sure.
Well, unlike a lot of financial advisors, you took it to the next level and got your CFP, right?
I
So
did.
you could actually add some expertise.
I did.
Yeah.
And that frankly was a huge catalyst for making a transition, because part of the training and part of the whole reason why you would choose to become a CFP and go through that pain is to essentially learn how to do your job better, right? Bring a higher level of service. And tacked onto that is this idea of fiduciary responsibility. And when you kind of just pause and take a look around and realize how quickly technology is moving, how much the world is changing from a day-to-day basis, if you're not ready for that, and if you can't adapt along with that, you can't give your clients the highest level of service. So for me, it felt actually imperative that, hey, if I'm going to truly take this CFP thing to heart, then I really need to be in a place where I can leverage all the new tools or at least be conversant in them and make sure that I'm not leaving any opportunities on the table for the clients.
Well, and your clients look to you as their financial advisor, as an expert in investments, an expert in taxes, an expert in
Right.
all kind wealth planning,
Right.
estate
Right.
planning, right? So they look to you as to have that expertise. But what I think they don't realize is that in the bigger firms, you're really a salesperson. You're the face,
Yeah.
and the firm provides all of that direction. So
Yeah.
it's a little different ball game here where we really have to be all of those things to our clients.
Yeah. And it's funny you bring that up because if you or anybody knew the 30-year-old Adrian, the idea that I would ever have any component of my future career, be a business development role was just anathema. That was never
Yeah.
something that I felt comfortable doing or any of that sort of thing. But sure enough, it was certainly one of the only ways you can succeed at the old broker dealer was you have to be able to get new
You
business. And
got to be
so
able to sell. Yeah.
yeah, you got to do it. And there's always a balance between, is this going to be a sale or is it going to be a good relationship or whatever? I like to, I hope that I've walked a very clean line with people and that I think I can appreciate both sides of that coin. But having it so much so overweighted as part of the job was definitely one of the reasons that I didn't like to work at the broker dealer and would much prefer to be on the independent side because it gives all of us, right, Calvin, it gives our company the flexibility to grow at the speed that we all feel comfortable with.
Yeah.
And I don't have this artificial aspect of my job where it's like I have to go out and fetch new business. Like I want to work with the people that belong here and that understand what we're trying to do and can appreciate it and can appreciate me. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
think
for
there's
sure. I mean,
yeah.
look, when I started out as a research scientist and engineer at Columbia Broadcasting and then at Bose, and I ended up in sales. It's like who would have ever thought that?
Yeah.
Um, but I think one of the things that made me super successful is I was my client or my customer's advocate.
Yeah.
So I would give my company a hard time. I would, be in the back room. I'd be talking
Sure.
to the president saying, "Hey, we got to do this." Like I was in there getting the client the support they needed.
Yeah.
And that's a part that I think people don't really see. You have to be your client's advocate with the firm and make sure they're getting
Yeah.
everything they should.
Yeah. 100%. And when you're in, going back to being with a big broker dealer, that thing's a behemoth at this point. 100 years of operating history, which is maybe a good thing, but maybe a bad thing. And that weight, that institutional weight, was definitely, I felt the pressure of that, and I know that there were things that were difficult to get through for clients, and there was just acres of paperwork that exist because of this 100-year track record of operating that are institutional roadblocks. And then all of a sudden, I find myself in this role of being the customer success manager, trying to help them succeed at because
Yep.
all this stuff is there. But other pros, I think that institutional weight does lend credibility, and I know that made a lot of people feel comfortable that their money was in a good place. I think that by and large, those types of companies, they're going to take good care of their customers, right? They may not be the fastest horse. They may not have the access to all of the investment choices that people are really looking for. They may draw some hard lines with tax advice and all of those things, but
Hmm.
by and large, it's a good place for people to invest. They're going to be taken care of. If their guy or their gal is not taking care of them, there's somebody they can talk to get help. So I
Right.
think that there is this genuine concern for having a good customer base. Um, but the trade-off in my mind was really starting to weigh down uh, what I felt like I could deliver for clients, right? It was large and slow. The technology adoption was definitely on the lower end of the spectrum, and it was one of those things where our cost structure kept going up, but the level of service delivery for the clients, wasn't going up correspondingly along with that.
Well, yeah, and I mean it just kind of comes with the territory, right? Small startup companies or smaller or smallish companies, they are scrappy. They're in
Sure.
survival mode. You do what you need to do to make the business run and keep your clients happy. And as things grow and you start layering in more
Mhm.
people, then bureaucracy gets layered on top.
Right.
And a lot of times those bureaucrats didn't live in the trenches. They don't understand, right? So they create rules and
Sure.
processes that just bog you down without understanding, without having to live them.
Yeah.
Like I've experienced that, right? Where my manager would say to me, go do something, and I wanted to say to him, you go do it. And you know,
Wouldn't that be great? Yeah.
yeah, because
Yeah.
it's easy to tell somebody to do something if you don't have to deal with the consequences.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, and the extreme end of that is the government, right? So you've got little companies, you've got medium-sized companies, you've got really big companies, and the bigger they get, the more they start to look like the government with large bureaucracies and tons of rules, and very difficult to get anything
Yes.
done.
Yes. And I've been in that world as well. And I remember how hard it was. And I was actually thinking about this example. I don't know what it pertained to, but I remember the idea of um, independent, raw entrepreneurship, right? People
Hmm.
they go out and they start a company and they can have this thing that they've built from their ground up and they built their team around whatever the company was and then they become successful and if you're Jeff Bezos you're going into outer space, right? These
Right,
incredible stories. There's 1,000 of these things in America.
right.
And they all kind of center around this idea that you bootstrap up, right? You do fight some interesting battles. You don't have all this heavy infrastructure around you that you have to fight through. It's just, you and your product and success or failure. And it made me think about the Navy days where you could put that analogy on like the captain of a ship, right? Like he's the guy in charge and he's going to take his ship and go do a mission and have total control over the success or failure of this 350 person vessel. And it's not like that at all. Is the point I was trying to make. There's almost no ownership that a captain has other than the responsibility for the ship, right? That he gets orders from an admiral, who gets orders from somebody else, who gets orders from a strike group. And literally our position in life was dictated like down to the minute every day. It was very,
Wow.
very non-independent. And I don't know what I was thinking in my head when I thought of this example, but it does the idea being like you can have this illusion of independence or this illusion of success or failure as a small part of a large company
Hmm.
because they would always tell me it was my business and I could do whatever I wanted. But the reality is I'm in this umbrella system where I cannot, right? I have to operate under their rules. And if I'm not following this very specific track, then I'm not going to succeed or fail as defined by the broker dealer. So
So to use your Navy analogy, so the strategy came from the general, I'm assuming, somebody
always,
way high up, and then
yeah,
it got communicated down through the command chain to the captain, who was really, yeah, it was his ship, but he was there to implement the strategy and make sure it
correct,
was successful.
correct. Yep, 100%.
Yeah, got it.
And
Yep.
and I was the navigator. That was my best job anyway. And I can remember we had finished up our deployment and we're getting ready to go home. Everybody wants to go home. So the captain over the course of that day, probably I was in his office 10 or 15 times with a new idea on how to get home. He's like, why don't we go through Seychelles? I'm like, why don't we go through Seychelles? So I went back to my chart room and plotted that course. And then it came back. He's like, well, why don't we go around the Horn? Okay, let's do that. So I'd go back and plot that course. And I did this, 15 or 20 times. And I think he submitted all these options to the strike group commander. And I was like, nope, you're just going straight back through the Red Sea and the bed. There was no weighing of any of that. It's like, nope, it's cheaper to do it this way. So save gas and get your butt back to Virginia. So
Wow.
yeah, it
Well,
was kind of sad.
you remind me of a story. So I was one of my sales jobs. I was working for an image processing company, and the vice president of engineering had a sailboat. So a bunch of us
Hmm.
went out sailing around somewhere in one of the North Shore harbors up near Boston. I don't know if it was Marblehead or where it was. And we're on his sailboat, and we end up in fog, pea
Hmm.
soup fog, and we weren't able to read our how many knots we were running because it wasn't working.
Well, that's
Um,
getting exciting.
all we
Yeah.
had was a compass, and his radar wasn't working. So we're in pea soup
Wow.
fog, and the way we navigated, all we had was a compass. We knew the direction we were going, and we knew how long the boat was.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
so we would time how long it took to go as we'd pass a buoy, right?
Yeah. Dead
We would
reckoning.
time
I love it.
from the
Yep.
front of the boat to the back. Okay, this is how many knots we're going, and this
Yep.
is the direction we're going, and then we would sort of figure out where we were on the map and where
Yeah.
we had to go, and we made it through that. Like it
That's
was
great.
insane. It was
Yeah.
insane. But
Yeah. There's always a way, right?
but
But
that's
that's
how a small company works, right?
yeah.
Something breaks and you just make it work.
Yeah. And yeah, yeah. And the cool thing is, I mean, you're out there, you guys are out there with your compass, and your Mark 1 Mod 0 eyeball. But maybe the extension of the analogy now is, it doesn't have to be so difficult, right?
Right.
I think that was one of the eye-opening things towards the end of my tenure at the broker dealer, coming back to this transition thing, is, once you start sort of breaking down those fear walls in your mind, like a lot of things, you realize, well, there is a solution for that, right? There actually is a solution for compliance. There's a
Hmm.
solution for the investing part of it, right? There's all these things that I'd built up in my mind, like, no, I need to have support from the home office for these things. Turns out that's actually quite easy to do, or at least there's a way to do it. Hopefully, it's not so old school that it's a compass on a map and we're dead
Yeah,
reckoning, but
yeah, that was pretty old school.
yeah, but I guess that's what I mean by where the technology has progressed. That somebody like me who's used to having that level of support, in fact, it's readily available in many other places. You just have to know, vet some services and really make sure they can deliver what you need. But it was awesome to land at Clear Capital because you guys had a bunch of that in place already. You were
Yeah.
the ability for the investment side of things to be taken care of is fantastic. That was always a point of contention for me. And the
Well,
rest of it we've just been solutioning for over the past 6 months. It's been great.
well, I'm sure you found this, in your previous lives, but at Merrill Lynch, and I've been a customer of financial advisors before I started Clear Capital Management. Nobody ever could tell me why things were in my portfolio and what the purpose was, right? It's just, oh, well, you need to be
Yeah.
diversified. We're putting you in high yield bonds because they have good returns, right? And we're putting you in all these companies so you're protected. Um, but nobody could ever tell me how that would contribute to my performing on the upside and performing well when things were not good, right? And that's one of the things that I think we've been able to do here.
Yeah. Yeah. No, in spades. And for all of you who are new to Calvin and I, you would definitely be quite surprised at the way we manage the assets over here. I've worked with my clients over the past 6 months to kind of bring up that level of education and make sure everybody is comfortable with what's in their portfolio and how they view it. And I would say we've never had that level of detail in a conversation, with a few exceptions, over this past several years anyway.
Yeah.
So from my standpoint, from the CFP standpoint, it does make the fiduciary part of the exercise a lot more easy to express because everything that's in there makes sense, and it's easy for me to communicate the value and communicate to clients what we're doing. And most of the time, that's half the battle. I found, is being able to talk about it.
Well, it was really interesting. So last night, Gail and I went out to Bell's, which is a place we like to go to.
Heard you
And
talk about the spells before.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's a great place in Lambertville. She brought a friend of hers that she does some work with. She's an artist now, but this woman ran a hedge fund, and she's retired now, and she just like does art. And her husband, who I was talking with, he was at Merrill Lynch for years and was a money manager. He ran funds. So
Sure.
and she was a bond analyst and he was an equity analyst. So I started talking to him about, well, a bond analyst has to essentially be an equity analyst because if you're investing in bonds, corporate bonds, you need to understand if the underlying companies, what the risk levels are. So we started having this conversation, and I started talking about how we create portfolios with high growth stocks and stable growth and treasuries, not corporate bonds. And so he
She
asked
probably
me,
didn't like that.
no, no, she didn't. But then he asked me, well, what high growth stocks are you in? So I started to tell him, and one of the first things he rattled off was we were talking about Palantir, which he owns. He has some,
Yeah.
and he said it's overvalued. And I said to him, you got to get away from that. You cannot use value to evaluate high growth stocks. And I use the example of Warren Buffett and Apple, right? When the iPhone was introduced, Apple was selling for, I think, 6 times its intrinsic value. So clearly not a value stock, clearly overvalued, right? And Warren Buffett didn't invest then. And when did he invest? Like, I don't know, a decade later or more or something like that, when the stock was selling for
Sure.
60% of intrinsic value, but it had gone up 90 times. So he missed 90 times his money by being a value investor. And so I said to him, when it comes to growth stocks, high growth, throw value out the window. You're investing in the business and the
Yeah.
growth of the business, not the current value. That's a
Yeah.
different ball game.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's a different lens that you got to look through to evaluate a different part of something, right?
Yep.
Like you don't expect that same kind of growth out of a bond, so you
Oh
don't
God, no.
you
Or
don't
or
really
or or a Procter and Gamble, right?
right.
It's a whole different purpose in your portfolio.
Yeah, and trying to paint that brush. Like I guess I wouldn't say we did that as much in the broker dealer space because we were very heavily, reliant on mutual funds and ETFs, which
Right.
I
So
know how you feel about
yeah,
those.
yeah. No, I mean, then you're over diversified, right? You got
Yeah.
150 stocks in one mutual.
Right.
How many mutual funds do you have? Four or five? So it's
Mm.
like you're
Yeah, you get
spread
a
all
lot.
over the place.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's an institutional style of investing that is probably meant to mitigate risk, not only for the clients, but also for the company, right? To
I
say,
think
hey,
I think
we've
it leans a little more toward the company.
could be, yeah,
Yeah.
could be.
Yeah.
Um, and I do want to stress that I don't believe that it is necessarily bad. I don't think that people are harmed by that.
Well,
And
no. In fact, I have one of my other videos. I have a conversation between Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger, where they're using a really bad term. They're referring to them as know nothing investors,
yeah.
which I think
Oh, you've told me about this one.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. That's a really bad description. But
Yeah.
basically what they're saying is if you don't know what you're doing, then it's okay to buy
Yeah.
diversify all over the place as long as you diversify across a number of stocks and over time, so you're dollar cost
Yeah.
averaging in. So it kind of acknowledges that
Yeah.
that's an okay thing to do if you don't know what you're doing. And what surprises me is that the big firms, where they're supposed to know what they're doing, are kind of acting like investors that don't know what they're doing,
Yeah.
right?
Well,
It's kind of an odd thing.
no, I'll give you some interesting perspective on that because that is one thing that I feel what was very specific about, at least when they hire people like me, is the roots of the company were folks were broker dealers. They were not financial advisors.
Okay,
They were certainly not financial planners. And what they were doing was they were bringing this idea of market investing to the America at large, right?
right,
Back in the time, it existed on Wall Street and then to some extent in Chicago. But if you were a farmer in middle America, you had no access to the stock market the way that you might have seen it on TV.
right.
So, but part of that was it's kind of part of the DNA of the company to give people the choice, right? And say, look, we are here. Adrian's a financial advisor. He's here to provide advice for you, help you build a portfolio that's going to keep you safe. But ultimately, it's your choice. And that was kind of an important thing, was making sure that we preserve this idea that a customer could choose what they wanted to put in there. And many times people were like, no, you're the expert. You put in there what you think you should do. And of course, we had some models that we could rely on, but the idea was that we had access to an ecosystem that we were in turn, spinning around in our chair and providing to the customer base, right?
Yep.
And that for better or worse is the way it is, but it was never like do it our way or the highway. You have to be in this. So there's something to be said for that. I do think that as a person, I enjoy choice. Like I like to make a choice. I
Yeah.
like vanilla some days and I like chocolate other days, right? That this is fine. We should all make a choice. It's just now I feel, having left that world and I'm now in a new world where there really is no, like, I don't have any incentive to do anything that isn't the best, right?
Right.
And so
And
if,
why would you, right?
right, like
Right.
in the right, yeah, right, why would anybody do that? So
Yeah,
I go to the
I'm gonna put together a subpar portfolio for my clients.
right, just see how they feel about that. No, of course it's absurd. But it's nice to be in a place where that's the imperative, and maybe a sacrifice is ideally that makes us all more reliant on picking the right setup and doing the right portfolio.
Yeah.
But as long as we have the math and the experience to back it up and the performance numbers that justify it, I think that's a fair trade-off.
And
And
I think this came
Greg,
about because Eric and I didn't, and well, Jeff came from financial services. He was a trader on the proprietary desk at Bank of New York. But Eric and I are scientists, right?
yeah,
I've got a master's in physics. He's got a master's in electrical engineering from
yeah,
MIT. And we took the scientific approach and said, we didn't study. I mean, I
yeah.
did study finance. I read, you can sort of see the book over there,
Oh
Securities
yeah,
Analysis, Graham and Dodd,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
So I did read the traditional stuff, but we took the approach of what works, what doesn't work, how should we look at this? We looked at the kinds of metrics that Wall Street uses and said, yeah, some of them are sort of interesting, but we came up with our own way of looking at
yeah,
things and then use the scientific method to figure out, did it make sense or did it not make sense? And
yeah,
that's an entirely different approach
yeah.
I've ever seen anybody use.
Yeah. And that may have been going on back behind the scenes. I doubt it, but it was never anything that trickled down to me,
Well,
and
what they told you about was modern portfolio theory, right?
yeah, that's what
When
we learned about it in the CFP course too,
Right,
to be honest.
you know when that was developed?
I think you said the 40s or 50s.
1950s. So
Yeah.
it's not so modern,
Yeah.
and I get the logic behind it, but it doesn't
Yeah.
really work.
Yeah. And I will leave that side of this thing to you. That's one of the reasons I joined Clear Capital and not somewhere else, is that somewhere else was, in some ways, in the investing world, it's out of the frying pan into the fire, right? You're
Yeah,
still,
yeah,
you still have to go somewhere for some expert assistance to build these portfolios. And knowing that, um, it's way better for me to be able to sit down and have a conversation with you, Calvin, and say, what can we do here? Like, how do we take this guy's investment mix and fix it, right?
right,
That's way more powerful than, waiting on hold, talking to somebody at JP Morgan who's just going to tell me to use a large cap index fund or something like this.
right,
So,
right.
without getting too much into the investment side of things, that was definitely a huge driver of change for me, which is, how do we just add one more step ahead of the competition and say, what can we do that they can't do? And that's have access to the
Well,
best kind of money management,
well, and
right?
because we're smaller, we can be much more nimble, right?
Yeah.
We talked about the bureaucracy and how
Yep.
slow it can be, and you're on phone with somebody at JP Morgan,
Yeah.
trying to get something done, where we can move very quickly and be very agile, which is a
Yeah.
benefit for us and for our clients.
And I'll say too, as things have played out, those of you listening or watching don't know this, but I'm in Colorado and Calvin's back in Pennsylvania. And the modern way of working has not impeded anybody's progress at all. It's not a thing for us to have a geographical barrier between us because we live in different states. And that's just another layer of both flexibility for my part and for all the other guys. But also, it just goes to show that there is technology and tools that obviate old ways of doing business. Like not having an office space that I have to pay for all the time is savings that I can pass on to the clients, right? For those of you who moved over know that just the act of signing that new documents for Clear Capital saved everybody close to 30% in fees instantly. And that's, it's not, you're getting, at least in my opinion anyways, we're able to do everything and then some that I could do at the former company. We can operate lighter and leaner, and faster, frankly. So that's a huge, it was very important for me that no matter what I did, I was going to arrive at a place where everybody was getting a better deal. So
Yeah, and I hope
that's
our clients feel more loved than
I
they
hope
did
so.
before,
Guys, if
right?
you don't,
Because
give me a call, please. Uh,
because we can do, we can do more. We can be
yeah.
more responsive. We can be more informative. So I hope they feel that.
Yeah. Yeah, I hope so too.
Yeah,
And I know it's been a lot of disruption. So for those of you who lived with me through that, from the bottom of my heart, thank you again. I can't say enough good things about that. The experience from my end has been nothing but positive, and I appreciate all of your patience. And then for those of you who are new, um, welcome to the independent RIA world, right?
yeah,
We're independent of all of the sales constraints of other broker dealers, and the advice and the experience you get here exists because one, we're professionals and we want to do the best that we can do, but also we want to see you guys succeed to the best of your ability. So
great,
yeah, yeah. I
awesome.
mean that's all I got,
That's
Calvin. I don't
all
know if
you
you got any other
got?
questions
Well,
or
while
if
you're
you're
thanking
curious
your
about anything
clients,
else.
I want to thank my clients for taking a risk on me, right? He's this crazy scientist telling me he's got a better way to invest, and they went, right, because I was telling them things that they weren't hearing other places, and
Yeah,
they took a risk and went with me and lived through, nothing's perfect out of the gates, and
yeah,
we had little hiccups there, here and there, and we had portfolio ideas that worked fabulously sometimes and didn't work so well other times, and we've come a long way. So
yeah,
I'm glad they stuck it out and stayed with us, and I think they're very happy as a result.
yeah. It's great. I mean, that's a good thing I think to end on and to mention is that nobody wins this game all the time, right? Like I've
Yeah.
been doing Calvin, you've been doing it for a heck of a lot longer than I have. Like there will be strikes and gutters, to use a bowling analogy. That
Well, hopefully no gutters, but
right. Hopefully no gutters. Well,
we get some
there's gonna
splits.
we're gonna win the war, but we're not gonna win every battle, right? Like
Right, right. Oh no,
they're just
anytime you invest in something other than the S&P 500, you're going to outperform sometimes and underperform others. And that's just the reality, right?
Yeah. And just like I would have told you at the previous company, like the money's only half of this, right? Like you have a financial plan for a reason, and it's cooked into that plan to look at success and failure in terms of your money, right? So a lot of that stuff, you know, it matters, but the choices you make around that are as important, right? So I don't want people to lose sight of that. And don't have just one metric that you evaluate any of the things in your life, right? There should be a few ways that success or failure manifests itself, just like there are ways, things you would choose to be important aspects of a new car or a new home or whatever, right? It's multifaceted, and to focus on only one of those things could be myopic, and you might be losing sight of the larger picture. So anyway, blah blah blah. It's a lot of words out of my mouth.
Well, so
Okay.
so so navigator, where are we going to navigate to for the next one of these?
So no, that's a good question. I feel we were talking about this idea um, of just things people invest in, right? Not just money, not just stocks. So we're hoping to get some folks involved in the podcast who have interesting ways or interesting stories about things they've invested in or things that are investable. So whether that's classic cars, whether that's
Real estate.
right,
The guy
things
sat
you're
next to at dinner last night likes to do antiques now that he's
perfect.
retired.
Yeah, there's this whole world of just fascinating and interesting things. I don't know if they're still relevant anymore, but those the non-fungible tokens, Calvin, remember those?
Oh
Like whatever
God.
happened? Like I'd love to
Oh,
talk to somebody who
my
sank $1 million into
oh
NFTs,
my God.
right?
My son's friend, who's a great guy, called me up and said, you got to get into these NFT things, and he had actually made some pretty decent money on some
Okay.
he bought.
Yeah.
So I played around with it on VV,
Oh,
bought
Calvin.
a couple of them, and worthless now. But
Yeah.
it was an interesting
Sure.
idea. And maybe some things will still end up being worth something, but
Yeah.
it was an interesting concept.
Yeah. So like those are some things we'd like to explore. I think, one of our other partners is or has had a career. We actually served together on the USS Monterey, but he's had a career in the banking world, and his perspective is fascinating
Mm.
on how big banks conduct business and treat their customers, both good and bad. So I think we'd like to get him on here and just hear some of those good stories. Um,
Talk about the 7 things you should avoid at a bank or something.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah. And
Yeah,
hopefully there's like a
nah.
thing that like a reason why you would do it. Like hopefully we
Right,
can throw them
right.
a bone or something. But yeah, those are some of the interesting things we'd love to talk about, and just kind of bring a little bit of peek behind the curtain, as it were, to as much of the fun stuff as we can. So,
Well, look, and if you have any ideas of things you would like us to discuss, please put them in the comments, and we'll be
100%.
happy to respond.
Yep. Yep. All right. And on that note, well, thanks for listening or watching, depending on where you're at. I'll see you all next time.
Yeah, thank you. Investments and investing aren't that complicated if you know how to allocate your portfolio without destroying your returns and getting little to no protection from downside risks. As an investor, you need to take the long view and allocate according to your risk tolerance rather than fretting about what's currently happening in the world or what everybody else is doing that you read about in the media with their portfolios. If you want to be a better investor, I discuss how to allocate your portfolios in 2 key videos linked in the pinned comments below, titled The Ideal Portfolio Using Just 2 ETFs or Mutual Funds, and The Ideal Portfolio Using Individual Equities. Again, link in the pinned comments. That's all for now.
Stay up all night, gotta work now. Make up my mind and it turns around. Say that I'm fine till I burn out. Thinking this money sounded so nice. Ambush here in the strobe lights. Pay anything for the high price. This life feels like the sunny water.